Hello there, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to another episode of CookieCast. Today on CookieCast, it's the football podcast. Well, it's getting to that time, isn't it? It's very, very much the back end of the football season, and it feels that way very much so by the games predicted this week, shall we say. Find out what happened in last week's games and find out what we think is going to happen in this week's games. All that coming next, but before that, please do consider like, share, subscribe and comment. Leave a review where you can leave a review. And obviously the big one is share the podcast around. Please. Right, let's get started. Here we go. This is CookieCast, football podcast.
Recording in progress.
Yes, indeed, ladies and gentlemen. For one of the final times this season, recording is indeed in progress. Welcome along to another weekly instalment of your football updates from us here at the CookieCast Podcast Network. We're back to the full complement of four. The eagle-eyed amongst you will have noticed from YouTube. The full boat of myself, Messrs. Cook, Woodmansey and Moore. How are we this week, fellas?
Warm.
Yeah, warm. Warm would be the case. Apparently, Andy is sat on the face of the sun as we do this podcast. It would appear.
I need some.
Yes,
vitamin D.
It's taken a turn for the warmer in the north of England, which you might be thinking never happens, but apparently it does, and it's weird.
Just located on Andy, though. That's the
Yeah. Anyway, it's perfectly located in that particular section of the north of England where Mr. Cook resides. But yes, so we go into the week knowing that it was the last game for definite for my team, and that's where we start this week. And Middlesbrough took on Watford in their final game of the regular season. Sadly, it was to be their only game of the regular season, as they didn't make the playoffs. But they did go out with a bang, so to speak, as they got a 3-1 win at home to Watford. Sounded like it was a bit of an open game to start with, a couple of chances here and there for both sides, but it was Borough that opened the scoring on the 28th minute. I bet you can't guess who the goal scorer was. That's right. It was the guy who's got something ridiculous, like 8 in his last 15, or probably even more. It's probably even more than that, to be fair. But yes, Emmanuel Latte Lath got the opener on the 28th minute. It was yet again another assist from Luke Ayling, pulling the ball in from the right-hand side. Latte Lath managed to sort of peel off and give himself a couple of yards of space on the edge of the 6-yard box to hit the ball first time. Caught it on the half volley and just like sort of wrong footed the goalkeeper, took him out of the equation altogether. It was 1-0 all the way up until the 73rd minute, where Watford got an equaliser from Hull City Botherer earlier in the season at Wesley Hoot. However, this one wasn't a speculative 40 or 50 yard effort. This one was a glancing header from a corner from the right hand side. He seemed to be fairly unmarked. Not the best, not the best bit of defending. But it wouldn't be a Borough game if they didn't give away a goal cheap as chips. They weren't there for long though. On the 78th minute, Alex Bangura popped up with a very rare goal for the left back. On the 78th minute to make it 2-1. A little bit of neat footwork in the box from Sam Greenwood. Carried the ball out to almost to the byline, then just pulled it back for Bangura to finish from around the penalty spot, low to the keeper's left. Something that was quite nice to see that came up on the social medias was the fact that as soon as he scored, he was pretty much mugged by the entire team to celebrate with him. So obviously he's had a couple of injury problems this season, so he's clearly a very popular member of the squad. And Borough made sure of the win on the 84th minute with a goal from Isaiah Jones. It was the second assist of the day from Luke Ayling. Again, just bombing down that right-hand side. Gets to the byline, cuts the ball back. Jones, unmarked, around the sort of 6-yard box, just finishes neatly from close range. Keeper again had no chance. And that was the game. 3-1 win for the Borough. Neither myself or Mr. Woodmansey were optimistic last week, as we'd both gone for 2-2 draws. We both had Latte last, but I had AJ Matthews to score. Wasn't even in the squad, so that was never going to happen. Whereas Stuart had Latte and Jones to score. Sadly, neither of us had Hoot as our Watford goal scorer, so we don't get any points there. Andy had gone for a 2-0 Middlesbrough win, though. Went for goals from Barlaser and Latte Laugh. So, 2 points for Andy, 2 points for Stu, just the 1 point for me. Sadly, no predictions from Mr. Moore last week, so he won't be getting any points, unfortunately. But
still might win the week. We know how this works.
He'll probably still end up winning the week. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So, our next game moves us still in the Championship, but to Mr. Woodmansey's team, as Plymouth Argyle were taking on Hull City. Plymouth knowing they needed to better a couple of other teams' results or equal them to stay in the division. Hull knowing that they needed to win and hope that either West Brom didn't win or that Norwich lost and got absolutely twatted into submission, so to speak.
Yep.
I'm assuming you were. Well, I can probably say for definite that you didn't traipse all the way down to Devon.
No, I did trip slightly down the country, but stopped at Stafford.
Sensible.
So,
That's where most people would stop. No. The listenership in Stafford just took a huge hit, but
well, we had a lovely time, but none of it was football related. So yeah, as Paul rightly said, Plymouth needed to win to stay up. Hull needed to win to get in the playoffs, but West Brom also needed to lose really to make that happen. That was the clearest cut way in. One thing that we didn't account for last week was that Plymouth currently have no manager, and therefore Hull were always going to lose. Hull did start brightly. Carvalho forcing the Plymouth keeper to make a good save at his near post on about 9 minutes. Plymouth seemed to then grow into the game, after which Morgan Whittaker had a sighter which flew way over the bar, but his second attempt to force a decent save from Ryan Alsop. Delap had a chance after being put through by Philogene. That was saved again at 27 minutes. But the deadlock was broken 5 minutes before half-time. Deep cross from the left-hand side, headed in by the Plymouth Argyle captain, Edwards. Rossini was then obviously needing to chase the game. However, I will say by this point, West Brom were already winning. So I don't know if there was any effect of the players knew, or he told them, or he was keeping abreast of it. But regardless of what was going on elsewhere, they needed to win. They needed to do their job, and they were losing 1-0. So he brought on at half-time Ohio and Omo, which is like the perfect Hull double substitution, and took off Delap and Tufan, which is strange to me. But the second half proceeded to be a bit dull. Both teams did have chances, but it wasn't exactly end-to-end entertainment, and the game snuffed out with that one goal earlier on in the game, and Hull ended up losing, finishing the season with a defeat, and unfortunately for any playoff aspirations, in 7th position. It was another game where they dominated possession, nearly 70% possession. That brought them 4 shots on target. The two weirdest statistics I saw from the entire game: if Hull had completed one more pass, they would have had exactly double the amount of passes that Plymouth had. Plymouth on 319, Hull on 637. And in the entire match, there was no yellow cards, which I'm not sure if that feels like a Hull City game if nobody's been booked, but still, it happened this past weekend. But yeah, no playoffs, so no more Hull City predictions this year. And as a result, of the days following, no more Liam Rossini team selections to make either. Yeah. Do you want me to go into this now, or might as well, I suppose?
I mean, you might as well, because obviously there's no more Borough and Hull predictions for the rest of this season. Obviously, we'll go through our season-long predictions that we made right at the start of the season. Once the Premier League fixtures are done, as there are still two rounds of fixtures left in the Premier League, so a couple more weeks worth of podcast material, and then we'll go through the season-long predictions. But until then, probably we're not going to be discussing Middlesbrough and Hull. So now probably the best time as good a time as any to go through the senior stuff.
Well, on the 7th of April, where the hell have I been? 7th of May. The statement was put out by Hull City, which I'm going to read some of. Hull City can confirm that we have parted ways with head coach Liam Rossini with immediate effect. Chairman and owner Adrian Ilijali said, "This has been the most difficult decision I have had to make as chairman of this wonderful football club. No matter how trying the circumstance, I have to remove personal sentiment from these moments and ensure the long-term vision of the club is at the centre of my thinking. Since Liam's arrival, we have enjoyed an open working relationship, and progress has undoubtedly been made over the course of his tenure. He will always be a part of this family, and I thank him for all his work. However, it has become evident that our visions for the future are not aligned, and I feel that now is the time to make a change. Our philosophy is clear. We will continue to drive this club forward, and whilst doing so, I will continue to be open and transparent with the fans. I know what this football club can achieve, and we will not stop in the pursuit of that. We have worked hard over the last 2 years to develop our squad. We now have many highly talented players at our disposal, and we will continue to invest and improve our playing personnel to give this club and its fans the success they deserve." The rest of it then went on to say that the assistant coaches, Justin Walker and Ben Warner, have also gone. Interestingly, Andy Dawson not mentioned in this, as he has had a stint as caretaker manager previously, and he's part of the furniture at City, having played left back for us for many, many years. Played alongside Liam as well. It also included the paragraph about how basically Hull was shit when he took over and then finished 7th the next year, which wasn't exactly highlighting a great reason to get rid of him. And it really caught seemingly everybody off guard. I don't know I know he's not necessarily everybody's favourite person, but has anybody seen the Simon Jordan, Jim White TalkSport segment at all that happened earlier on?
No, but I did see that someone had called in, and it sounded like they'd basically sort of had it out with Jordan over his sort of opinions as well.
Well, that's kind of par for the course. That's what that prick's there for. But the interesting point about it was that Jim White, being an actual man of football in somewhat reporting integrity, had managed to get a FaceTime interview with Ajun. So he pressed him about it. So, considering that we didn't really know anything other than difference of vision at the time that the press statement went out, we now have a little more detail on why. And apparently, their working relationship started to fall apart in January because the club brought in a lot of attacking players. So, obviously, you'd be talking Carvalho on loan. Obviously, Delap was still around and then unfortunately got injured. But lots of attacking players. And basically, he's come out and said that Rossini, his vision wasn't to play like ultra attacking football, and that he wants to see football that's going to make him jump up on his seat. Whilst that's kind of appeased me somewhat in the sense of I now understand why it's happened, it also makes me feel a lot less happy about where the club is headed, potentially, on the basis of it's a guy with a lot of money who likes football, so he's now like, what's going to happen next, in the sense of, great, we could score 85 goals, but if you've let in 140, you're still going to lose, aren't you? So I'm I'm not overly keen still on the reasoning. I know that there is a lot of emotion and sort of sentiment around Rosenior and his time at Hull, but it feels like a very big moment in the history of the club in the respect of there'll always now be that lingering what if question, because Hull have been very much in the ascendancy this year, and had Rosenior still been in charge with the backing of the owner, then what? I keep bringing it round to the Birmingham John Eustace thing. 5th when they sacked him, got relegated. So if we're near the bottom of the table next year, then what? We'll see.
I think that's the thing. I suppose, like, in some ways you can say, I've got a couple of kind of thoughts of it. That, obviously the incoming person will have pre-season to get their ideas in, so, like, slightly, again, sacking John Eustace and then them getting relegated is absolutely hilarious. But at least they'll have time to put in their ways, I suppose. But it just does smack of somebody random will come in, or someone people haven't heard of, or it'll be a big flashy name, and then come January you're going for a different person to kind of keep you up or something like that. And then the bizarre thing the other thing I'd seen was, I'd rather us lose 3-2 and be entertaining, because I know the next week we might win 4-1. It'll all balance out. No, it doesn't. And then I thought, all right, fine. He's not happy with them drawing 0-0, or winning boring games. So, like, at lunchtime today, I went and looked at, like, your past 2 or 3 months of games. There's not many boring games in that. Like, you had a bit of a kind of swoon in March, but previous to that, there's 3-2s, and you were winning the 3-2s, there was 2-1s, there's lots of kind of games with lots of goals, and I was kind of like, it just smells like a whole lot of bullshit to me. I think he's probably been offered a big name and thought, yeah, I'm going to take it. And sometimes I think a big name looks glitzy, but it depends on what kind of football they're going to play, because you could say, all right, yeah, David Moyes is coming in. I'm not saying that David Moyes is coming to manage you boys, but that's not going to be entertaining, and he's going to definitely have a differing of opinion with him. And I just think it's like, be careful what you wish for, because from what I've seen, you've played entertaining football. It might not be like, dam busters kind of thing, but it's not, it's entertaining. It's more entertaining than a lot of teams in that league. You should go and spend his time and go and watch Preston you should be force-fed Preston for a month, and and just go, right, if you think this is boring, go and watch them, because they are terrible.
Across the course of this season, this podcast has documented how, at the beginning particularly, wasn't overly keen on this passing it around the back business and all the rest of it, but as the season's gone on, I've got used to it, is maybe even too strong of a term, because you can understand why he's kind of taken the time to build that into the side and the benefits of doing it. It resulted, like Matt said, it's resulted in games that, the last home game of the season, yeah, we didn't win, but it was 3-3. That was the best game of football I've seen all season. So we've built and built and built to the point where it's getting there, and now this. It's just nuts.
It was a 3-3 against the team that finished second and went up automatically, no less. So, yeah, I think it's one of those situations where you're never really going to truly understand it until the next guy comes in. So I'd just say, just watch his space, and you never know. It could be the sort of the master stroke that ends up in them getting promotion next season. We just don't know. Come in.
At the moment, though, but everything else that the guy's done, like I should have said actually in the Plymouth game, the owner paid for £6 worth of drinks for every Hull City fan in attendance at the game. Looks like a massively good gesture. All the stuff that he's done, the free travel, the trips to Turkey, all the cheaper tickets, great, looks fantastic. But if it comes out that, like, I think this could genuinely be his first big mistake in terms of ownership, and it'll be a rough lesson to learn if he's gunning for promotion and actually he's fighting relegation again next year.
Yeah.
I'll
just jump in there quickly, Matt. We'll just have to sort of pinch it there. We'll have to reset the timer, so to speak, and we'll discuss it on the other side of the break. So hold that thought, and we'll just disappear for a couple of seconds. But we'll be right back after this.
Recording in progress.
And we are back. So apologies for cutting you off there quite abruptly, Mr. Moore. You were about to say something. If you can remember what you were about to say.
No.
Well, yes. Well, obviously we were discussing the decision for Hull to part company with Messina. I think like you said, it's probably like his first big misstep, potentially, in the eyes of the supporters and stuff like that. But
that's what I was going to say. But it's for a minority of people. If you want to get more people in the stadium and stick with the team, yeah, the people travelling down to Plymouth buying them a drink, that's what, 3,000 people you bought a drink for?
Cost him $10,500 apparently. He gave everybody a £6 voucher.
But how was that? So 1,500 people. But like the trips to Turkey as well. That's like 100 people. I think you got to. If you want a whole fan base to buy in, you got to think outside of the select 2,000 people that because going away is not it's not something everybody can do, particularly on a regular basis. And I just think if the fan base have got a particular connection, and obviously I've seen it at Forest, if the fan base have a particular connection with a manager, then it goes a long way to keeping the team right as well. Whereas if you start chopping and changing, you've got a different guy in each week and it's a different kind of method and you've got a different kind of style of play, so then you're adding more players in, it's getting more expensive. We're aware of what happens if you're doing that turnover of player and stuff like that. They spent a lot in January, not obviously loaning players, but it will have been expensive to have Carvalho on loan.
So, on that note, this is the thing, and I can't remember if I maybe put this in the group, but this is the thing that irritates me. Like, he's obviously not regarded seventh as a success. So given where we were last year, firstly, how can you not? Secondly, he obviously wants like results and a return on his investment instantly. I would argue that that's again from where what perspective you see it. It's reported that there's been £24 million invested in the playing squad this year. I'm not 100% on the figures, but I'm pretty sure that some of the teams that we've played against, some of the teams that we've beaten or drawn against, that have come down from the Premier League last year, will have had more than £24 million worth of parachute payments. So,
yeah.
If you're gonna expect to compete against those teams, and granted, the guy has come in, it's his own money, whatever. He's put in 24 million quid is not to be sniffed at. I don't mean to be disrespectful on that, but I just have a little bit of a check of your perspective, because if a team has spent or has the potential to spend 80 million quid on players and you've spent just over a quarter of that, where are you going to be? Because it ain't going to be above them, is it?
Well, I think, like you said, it's the perspective of it, though. Like, what, you finished 15th last year, was it? About that?
Yeah. And I think when Rossini took over, though, I think they were one place above relegation at the time.
And you've moved up to 7th in what I would say is a harder division this year. Like, you've got Leeds, Leicester, Southampton, who've all come down with the money, and long-term Premier League teams, so a lot of money. You've got other teams making a push. Middlesbrough made a bit of a push, or made changes to the team to make a push. You've got like West Brom, Norwich, all those teams that are in the playoffs. There's teams that are in between who've done the same. And it's a difficult division to then move. It's disappointing to lose on the last day of the season when you could have potentially got into the playoffs. You wouldn't have got in anyway, but it's disappointing. It feels very knee-jerky. It feels very kind of like, I'm going to say it, it's very Fawaz / early Marinakis at Forest. It's like, oh, well, we thought, and obviously the investment in January was, we could do this. And it didn't happen, but there's a reason why you were in the position to, we can do this, to push on. It just hasn't quite worked because you had a lot of injuries as well. The most weeks where I'm like, right, okay then, let's make my predictions. All right, go through the list of the usuals. Delap's been out a long time. Who's to say if Delap hadn't have come back, or hadn't have got injured, or got injured a month later, you would have been further along the track and you would have been better. Billy Sharp didn't work.
I would agree entirely with the Delap thing. I think if Delap had been fit all season, I think we'd have been in a different position again. I think it's all right, again, hindsight's lovely and all that, but the Cavallio signing was great. Absolutely great. If that had been in September rather than been in January, then what? It could have been for all of the ifs and buts and the injuries and all the rest of it. And I think we even said this between us at the time. The bit that it boils down to for me is that period of games where they drew 5 in a row. 3 more goals across, one each across 3 of them games, and we wouldn't be having this conversation now because they'd have been in comfortably in the playoffs. But I think, and that's the bit that happened around Easter. So it's all right him saying in this interview with Jim White about, that it started to break down in January when we brought in all these attacking players. Well, I think personally it's that period of time that he's maybe getting at, because January did coincide with Delap's injury, but also as well you bring in half a squad's worth of half a team's worth of new players and expect them to play attacking football after some of them had only debuted, I think, 48 hours after they'd signed for the club. Well, they aren't going to play as a team that quickly for a start. You need that transition of sort of bringing them in and then getting, like you say, getting the systems down and all the rest of it. But I do, in the respect of, I do agree that by March time and that period of games, I can sort of, it doesn't make it feel any better for me because I like the guy and I think he should have stayed. But based on his rationale today, he wants to be ultra attacking. I think that is the period of games that's cost Rossini his job rather than losing to Plymouth.
Yeah, I think you're probably right on that one. Like you say, any sort of, if you take just that string of the 5 games into account, even if they'd have lost 3 of them and won 2, they'd still have had more points. And it's just it's a strange one because there was a period. It happened at Borough. There was the period where they went on a run where they didn't concede for, I think it was 9 games or something like that, and everyone's like, oh my god, they're so hard to score against. Yeah, there was probably 6 0-0 draws in that, and it was Jesus Christ, this is bad. Fair enough they're not conceding, but they've got no attacking threat going forward and stuff like that, and unbeaten runs are yes, fair enough, it's good that you're not losing games, but if you're not winning games either, it's neither use nor ornament and stuff like that. So you can
who was your manager at that point?
Hey?
Who was your manager at that point?
This well, funny enough, this is the very early days under Karanka, and obviously it eventually became good for Karanka. So
yeah,
this is.
I was going to say, just knock whoever that guy was, just knock him off the ultra attacking manager list for our.
Yeah, exactly. But that was the thing. Obviously, he came in, he got the defensive side sorted first of all, and then he tried to have the attacking players once he got them in the bases of like the team down like that.
Yeah.
And obviously that might have been Rossini's like sort of mindset. Sort out the defensive side first, get them comfortable playing the like sort of like play out from the back stuff, and then we'll build up the attacking threat, like slowly and like piece by piece and stuff like that. But obviously we'll never know because that's
the line. The line in the interview with Jim White that irked me the most was, "Oh, by the way, I'm not saying that Liam's philosophy is bad. It's just not good for us as a club." Again, bullshit.
Well, we've had our respective says on it anyway, and what will be will be. From a predictions perspective, no one had a Plymouth Argyle win. I was the only person in the group that even gave them a goal, and I didn't have Edwards. So 0 points across the board on that one. So that's the championship done and dusted for the season, which means we are just left with Premier League games, and the first of which from week 40 was Sheffield United taking on Nottingham Forest. Forest went into this knowing that if they got a win, it would almost see them safe to a certain degree if results went their way. Did it pan out like that in the end, Mr. Moore?
It did, but you phrased that completely wrong, because I saw Forest 10-1 to go down, and I was like, might stick a fiver on that.
No! No!
Doing that reverse jinx thing again. That's what it is.
So, I think, again, 3 o'clock kickoff, so no access to goals, just have to rely on the radio, which was commenting on, I think when I turned the radio on, it was on Newcastle Burnley, which everybody wants to listen to. So obviously you get the nice update midway through the first half that Ben Brereton Diaz has won a penalty. Montiel went to ground. I can't quite work out if he fell over, was going to tackle him, but all they ended up doing was giving him the perfect opportunity to swan dive over him and get a penalty. Stuck the penalty away, gave it big licks in front of the Forest fans. It's my current pet peeve is people giving it big in front of away fans, then going, well, they said horrible things to me afterwards. I'm like, of course they did, because that's generally what happens when you give it big licks in front of somebody. I think so. Forest were quite poor for the first half an hour, but managed to get into it not just before half time through Callum Hudson-Odoi. Nice move through the back. Another thing that made me laugh was Sheffield United fans booing Morgan Gibbs-White. I was thinking, he was there on loan with you for a season and got you to the playoffs. It was bizarre. But he played it out to the left. Hudson-Odoi controlled the ball and it seemed to bobble a little bit, so he kind of hit it on the half volley for a nice kind of curling finish. His kind of standard move is cut in, go down the left, cut in, hit it with his right foot. This one kind of bobbled and he kind of curled it round the keeper to make it 1-1. 1-1 at half time. Went in, came back in in the second half. Set piece, free kick. Morgan Gibbs-White plays it into the box. Brereton Diaz flops onto the floor because Murillo ran into him. Now, Murillo's a solid guy, but Brereton Diaz is as solid as he is, and he went down like a sack of shit. To which, I think Elanga laid the ball in, volley headed it back, and Ryan Yates stuck it in the back of the net for his first goal in the Premier League. Which now means he's scored in every division from the National League up, and has scored in the FA Cup and the League Cup, which is not too bad. So yeah, first Premier League goal after 50 odd appearances, I think they said. Typical Forest, like to keep it nice and nervy. There was lots of chances for Sheffield United, but Hudson-Odoi kind of finished it off in about the 80, just after the 80th minute. Another nice flowing move again from Forest. I think Bolly won the ball just in the Sheffield United half. Played it to Gibbs White, who played it out to Hudson-Odoi. Same kind of thing, cut in off the left with his right foot, curled it round the keeper for 3-1. He'd had like a very similar chance just before that had whacked off the post as well. So cracking game for him. 3 points to Forest gives us, I think, 5 points above Burnley and 3 points ahead of Luton with, I mean, a vastly superior goal difference to Burnley. Like, I think it's 18 goals, I think, something like that, and about 10 or 11 to Luton as well. So effectively an extra point, but I know what Forest are like. So yeah, 3 points ahead of Luton, but Luton have got West Ham and the Spuds to play, which we know that can go all kinds of wrong, I think. Or maybe no, not the Spuds. They've got West Ham, or maybe they have. Whoever they've got to play. So then, pardon?
I think Fulham's their last game this week.
Oh, there you go. Yeah, another useless London team. I knew it was two teams that are on holiday and definitely look like they're ready to, they've packed their bags. And then, obviously Burnley have got the Spuds this weekend. So I'm not home and dry just yet, but nearly there. We also got the news this week that Forest won't be getting any points back from their points deduction. The cynic in me would suggest that, they're probably not going to want Burnley to be relegated on a cold Monday afternoon via a press release from a Premier League independent adjudicator, which effectively it would have done if they would have said Forest get a point back on Tuesday when they released it. That would have effectively relegated Burnley, and it would have just, I think the mockery crew would have been out even more in force. So yeah, no points back. I think at the time I said it was frivolous and unnecessary. I think I was proven right on that one. I think it was frivolous and unnecessary. You've broken the rules by 34 million. It doesn't matter how much you sell Johnson for. They're gonna try and take a hard line with it. We'll see if that hard line carries across to Andy's team when they eventually get their day in court.
Hasn't that date now been set for sometime around the 30th of 30th of February next year?
The 30th of never.
Yeah, exactly right.
The 30th of under the carpet.
They're not going to punish the team that brings in a lot of revenue for the league, are they? That would be silly. But the less we say about that, the better. Predictions wise, we all had Nottingham Forest wins. So points all across the board. Andy had 2-0. Wood and Hudson-Odoi as his goal scorers. 2 points there for Andy. Stu and myself both had 2-1. We did have a slight difference in our goal scorers. We both had Gibbs White and Elanga for Sheffield United, for Nottingham Forest. Sorry. Whereas for Sheffield United, Stu had Brereton Diaz. I just had Brereton. Now, based on what
Stu gets the point then.
No, based on what BBC has their scorers listed as, and let me just double check. And based on what Sheffield United, the Sheffield United goal scorer, as listed on the Sky Sports app of Ben Brereton, I'm just going to give the points just to me.
I thought you said that it was Shithouse that scored in the game, not that was giving out the points for this week.
the connection was obviously very terrible there. All I could hear was Stu say, "What a great decision, Paul." That's why you're the host of the podcast. Great decision making. No, don't worry. I've given you a point, even though for some bizarre reason you've added something Spanishy sounding to the end of his name. God, strange.
I know that the championship season has finished, Paul, but there's no need to be bitter about 1 point difference. That's all I'm saying.
So, 2 points apiece for me, Stu, and Andy after that game. And our last game of the week, speaking of Mr. Cook, is his adopted side, Manchester City. As Mr. Moore was alluding to earlier, yes, they've been very naughty boys, but it would appear that they're several hundred charges that they have of breaching the financial fair play or profit and sustainability rules just seem to be getting ignored. But we'll cross that when it comes to it. So Mr. Cook's team, Manchester City, they took on Wolves, and not really a contest. Let's put it this way: by the time the first half had ended, Erling Haaland had yet another match ball to add to his personal collection. I believe this was either his 8th or his 9th hat trick, just for Manchester City alone, and he's been there just over 2 years or 2 seasons. He's been there for 2 seasons, so rather ridiculous. Yeah, he goes on the 12th, the 35th, and the 45th plus 3 minutes. The first of which was a penalty. Shortly after half-time, Wolves did try to make a bit of a contest of it with a goal on the 53rd minute from Hwang Hee-chan. But Manchester City put any sort of thoughts of a comeback to bed in the 54th minute when they were given another penalty. And Mr. Haaland stepped up to make it 4-1. They completed the rout in the 85th minute when the substitute Julian Alvarez came on to get his customary goal to make it 5-1 to Manchester City. Quite the thumping victory, you'll all agree. Andy had gone for a 2-0 Manchester City win with Haaland and Alvarez to score the goals. 3 points there. Stuart had gone for a 3-1 Manchester City win. Sadly, didn't predict any of the goal scorers. Had Nunes, De Bruyne and Walker for Man City. João Gomez for Wolves. I went 4-1 Man City with a goal each for Grealish and Nunes and 2 goals for Erling Haaland and a goal for the Wolves goal from Hwang. So I got 3 points for my goal scorers there. So all that means Stu got a point for that game. Andy got 3 points. I got 4 points, which means that for the week, Stu a very respectable 5 points from the 4 games. But myself and Mr. Cook both took 7 points from the 4 games. It's a tie this week, if you will. Both myself and Mr. Cook ending on 7 points.
Sorry, did you say Matt won the week then?
Yeah, because it was a tie.
Yeah, that's what I thought you said.
Obviously, Matt basically wins by default. So.
Yeah, okay, that's good.
To be fair, if it was a tie, that's the way that American podcasts would settle things, I think.
Yeah.
So because
and I'm fine with it. I'm fine with it.
As we know from watching American sports, ties are apparently the worst thing ever.
So between you and Andy, you've got to do another half-hour bonus episode now where you just fight to the death.
Sounds like it. I think it's like if you keep an eye on the release schedule of the podcast, because that'll be in your feed within the next week. So
I don't know why, but my mind just went off to Celebrity Deathmatch then for a second.
Very nice. Very nice. Championship done and dusted. Sadly, no extra games for Hull to be predicted for the rest of the season. So 3 games left for week 41. 2 Manchester City games and 1 Nottingham Forest game. The first of which sees Fulham taking on Mr. Cook's adopted side, Manchester City. This one is live on the TNT Sports, so you'll be able to watch it on Saturday morning / afternoon, depending on what you're looking at as timings. Obviously, it's Mr. Cook's team. He will give his prediction last. So I'll jump in here. I've gone for a straightforward 3-0 Manchester City win. Gone for a goal apiece each from Haaland, Foden and De Bruyne. Stu, what have you got down for Fulham versus Manchester City?
I think they'll be saving themselves for the following game. So I think that they'll still win, but I've not gone quite as optimistic as you. I've gone 2-0 to Manchester City with Haaland and De Bruyne.
Slightly similar, but not quite as optimistic. Matt, what have you got down for Fulham, Man City?
I've gone 1-2 Man City.
Your goal scorers, please.
I've got Muniz for Fulham and Haaland and Foden.
Very nice. Well, Mr. Cook, how do you see the first game this week for you boys panning out?
It's one of those. I'm surprised you're even asking me. It's clearly going to be 2-0. And it's going to be the Man City double, isn't it?
Haaland and Alvarez to score.
That may or may not be the first of 2 times I predict that this evening.
It's the hot hand. Why wouldn't he play it? Let's put it that way. Our second game of week 41 sees Nottingham Forest taking on Chelsea. And this too is live on the Sky Sports telebox this time. 5:30 p.m. kickoff. Mr. Moore's team, he will go last. Andy, what have you got down for Nottingham Forest versus Chelsea?
Very similar to a previous prediction. It's 2-0 to Forest. I think Forest are going to want to cross that line strong. No surprises. You know, it's that time of the week. Andy's got wood. And as we all know, big fan of all Simpsons characters and Nottingham Forest players who are Simpsons characters. So I'll have Hudson Odoi. Never stops being funny.
In keeping with that theme, I will give my prediction as I've gone for a 1-2. Sadly, I think Chelsea might just have too much for Forest this one, but I have gone for Hudson Odoi to score. Obviously, the old boy rule fully in effect. And then I've gone for a goal apiece for Madueke and Palmer for Chelsea. Stu?
Same scoreline. Forest 1, Chelsea 2. I've got Palmer and Jackson for Chelsea. And purely because there was a bit of a sniff of his return, I've gone for Big T for Forest.
Big thumbs up there from the Forest fan, which means he must be on the periphery of being back.
Jacked!
He's been on the wedge!
I've gone for Chelsea 3-2 win.
Hey!
Here he is.
I think they've rounded into form just at the wrong time for Forest. I don't know. And Pochettino, I don't know how many times Forest have played against the Pochettino team. It feels like we lose against him every time. I've gone for an old boy who plays for Forest, a Chelsea old boy, but it's not the one you're thinking of. I've gone for Ola Aina, because he is also a Chelsea old boy. He's also scored this season as well. I've also gone for Big T to get one as well. And my 2 for Forest. And then I've gone for Palmer to get 2. And it's the couldn't hit a barn door with a banjo rule, i.e. Jackson. Jackson to get a goal, because I've seen him multiple times and I'm about to jinx Forest now. That boy cannot hit a barn door with a banjo, because wow, he is shocking. So, hat-trick for him this weekend.
Yeah, probably. Surprisingly large numbers, massively inflated by that hat-trick he scored against Spurs, I seem to remember, earlier in the season. Obviously, you'll have to go back and have a look at my face that I made when Matt said that he couldn't hit a barn door, as I definitely misheard the word that you said. So,
never heard the word "pause for effect" being truer, is what Paul is saying, I believe.
Our final game of the week sees Tottenham Hotspur taking on Manchester City. For Mr. Cook's team, he will give us full prediction last. I've gone for a 2-1 Manchester City win from the goals from Son, Haaland and Foden. Matt, what have you got down for Spurs Man City?
I've got a 3-1 Man City win. Spuds have gone very spudsy all of a sudden. But I've gone Richarlison for the Spuds.
Oh, talking to people who couldn't get a bando with a banjo, Jesus Christ.
And then Haaland, Silva and De Bruyne for Man City.
Stu?
I've also gone Spurs 1, Man City 3. I've got Son for Spurs and Foden, Alvarez and Haaland for City.
Which just leaves the big man himself, the huge Man City fan, Mr. Andrew Cook, to round us out for the week. What have you got for Tottenham Hotspurs versus you boys?
I can only presume you've already written it in the book. Why change a winning combination at this stage of the game?
The book reads 2-0 with Haaland and Alvarez as the goal scorers. That brings us to the end of yet another podcast for this week. Obviously, thank you to these wonderful gentlemen for going through their teams with me and all of you, of course. Join us again next week where we'll go through the results of those 3 games, bring you the last 2 games of the season. Well, actually, that's a lie. Last 2 games of the season for our respective teams, Nottingham Forest, and then whoever Mr. Cook is supporting at that point, be it Chelsea, no, not Chelsea, be it Fulham, Spurs, or indeed Manchester City. But yes, tune in next week where we'll break it all down and we'll go through it all over again. Thank you, as always, for listening. And we'll see you next week. But until then, take care. Speak to you later. We'll see you next week. Bye.
So there we go. Oh man, it's nearly over. It's a shame it's nearly over. But it'll be over and then it'll come back. And there will be more football and more football podcasts. Wonderful stuff. Season isn't quite over for all football, so do tune in next week. See what happened in this week's games and see what happens, or what we think is going to happen in next week's games. Before you go, please do consider like, share, subscribe and comment. Leave a review where you can leave a review. Check out the website, cookiecast.com. There we've got social media links and an email button for you to get in touch with us. That is it for this one. Until next time, I'm going to say bye, and I'll see you then.
Thank you for listening to these grumpy old men talk about football. If you've enjoyed this episode, please like, share and subscribe.